before. All right, folks, welcome to part 3 of the LCTRfan Rob Noerr State of the 2022 Election 10-part series. We've already done 2 parts. This is the 3rd part. We're going to do 10 of them right up until midterm elections 2022. It's April 5th. We're a little bit late. I was supposed to do this last week. I've been trying to do these sort of late in the month so that the 10th one will be late October, right before the November midterm elections. But we're a little bit off. But man, I guess my first comment to start this off is that it seems like this is just flying by and the election's going to be here before we know it. I mean, we're 7 months out. We are literally 7 months away from the election. It doesn't even feel like the election is really kind of ramped up yet to me. Does it to you?
No, and I've been doing a lot of interviews with people running here in Pennsylvania, Republicans running for Senate and for governor. Those are 2 big elections. And I mean, on one hand, it doesn't feel like it's ramping up, but when you look, these primaries are in June. You know,
Right.
To me, it's getting to that point where it's like, listen, these races, the primaries are going to be huge. And, I expect it's going to come fast and furious, like everything in our news cycle. Like once it starts, it's going to be new news every day in many of these races, I think.
Yeah. So what's going on with the Pennsylvania primary? Oh, I was looking up some of the Pennsylvania candidates. Actually, I can't remember. Was it McCormick?
Yeah.
McCormick tops Oz in Pennsylvania Senate poll. What's going on in that race?
So it looks like hopefully I'll get to interview all the people involved. So I talked to Perry County Republican Commissioner who had really good takes on this. His feeling is that right now the 2 frontrunners are McCormick and Oz. Now, both of them have huge amounts of money. Both of them have made money outside of a career in politics. And, they're coming back to the state. The argument could be made that they're carpetbaggers. But regardless of that, it seems like they're the 2 frontrunners. Right now, it looks like McCormick is far and away outpacing Oz as far as money. But Oz has name recognition, and we'll see. He seems to be making a push here. It's still got some time until June. I interviewed a former ambassador to Denmark under the Trump administration named Carla Sands. She's another person that was from sort of outside the state. I really liked what Carla had to say. Some of her, it seemed a little too boilerplatey to me. Like, I'm Second Amendment, I'm pro-life. But she did voraciously defend Trump and sort of the treatment he got. So I would think that those are the 3 frontrunners right now. Honestly, I like Sean Parnell. He was forced to drop out, where he was running. So, yeah, that's the Senate race. In the governor race, go ahead.
Well, hold on. Let me just say on that. Previously, I think you had said that Dr. Oz, you weren't necessarily a fan of him, and to me, he's also seemed a little bit too candid. Frankly, I've been figuring out like how to kind of judge these Republican primary candidates because they all kind of say the right thing, right? So you have to really kind of look closely to figure it out. One way that I've really been able to kind of differentiate some of these candidates in the Republican primaries all across the country is if you go to their website and go to their issues, you can see some of them will call for deporting illegal aliens. And then other ones will not. They'll just say, oh, we need to secure the border and blah, 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 blah. That's one where I've sort of like really noticed a differentiation. Dr. Oz has just never kind of struck me as like a true believer type. I don't know that much about McCormick, though. So
I think both of them seem more like run-of-the-mill establishment Republicans than sort of the populist or, something you would see like Trump Republicans or, something like that. Dr. Oz, he said some things in the past, such as he can't, despite being a doctor, he doesn't take a position on when life began. That's something that Dr. Oz has said. And he sort of said some other things that are troubling that makes you think he would be more in the vein of a Mitt Romney than Jim Jordan or something like that. Now, the truth is they're going to be running against John Fetterman. Fetterman's a radical. He's attacked the Second Amendment. He's a big name. He'll be tough to beat in Pennsylvania. He's big in Philadelphia. So unfortunately, whoever wins that, even if it's a rhino that wins that primary, Fetterman is as radical as they come. So
you got to vote.
I'm hoping that someone like I'm hoping that someone like Carla Sands starts to get momentum. And Carla is from Western PA. Pennsylvania is very strange because Republicans that are from East Pennsylvania oftentimes struggle to get votes from independents and Democrats in Western Pennsylvania. But Republicans from Western Pennsylvania, there are a lot of Democrats in Pittsburgh and the suburban areas that are willing to vote for a Republican if they feel that they're a local and kind of have the local issues at heart. So traditionally, Republicans from Western Pennsylvania have done better. So we'll see if someone like Carlos Sanz or some of the other people can pull that out. But right now, the only, that Carlos, the only Senate candidate that I've interviewed. Okay. We got some more coming up, so hopefully I'll have more to say about that.
Yeah, so then you were going to start talking about the PA governor's race. That was what I was. That's reminded me of kind of what my thought was on that, because I looked at the Pennsylvania, and this is what kind of seems weird to me about Pennsylvania, especially when you look at the Senate candidates. You've got Doug Mastriano actually leading the poll. Latest poll from Emerson from late March shows Mastriano up 4 on everybody else. And Doug Mastriano is like a true like Trump sort of America First Republican, like a true believer, true conservative. Is he not?
Yeah, I mean, right now, Mastriano is who I would be cheering for. Formerly, I really liked a guy by the name of Jason Ritchie. I'd interviewed him 3 or 4 times. He was big into a 0% income tax and sort of energy independence. He wanted to start really fracking and doing other sorts of energy. He dropped out and has endorsed McSwain. McSwain sounds interesting, but again, seems more establishment. Mastriano is sort of in the Trump vein of anti-establishment. I need to talk to him, though, because one of the things that Mastriano got national attention for was railing against the 2020 election and the shenanigans that happened in Pennsylvania. Right. But the change to voting occurred through something called Act 77. And the Republicans voted for it, including Mastriano. In fact, almost all Republicans voted for it. And they thought that it would be, because of COVID, we'll have temporary voting that will be through mail and things like that. And then afterwards, they were like, we didn't like how that came out. So it'll be interesting to see what Mastriano says. But yeah, I think that his sort of, to me, he's in the vein of the Republican I most that I think would be willing to fight. That would be someone more like a DeSantis, is how I would view him. If he was elected.
So it's from an outsider, it's just kind of weird to see like these more establishment, sort of like the Dr. Oz types in the Pennsylvania Senate Republican, and then you look over and Mastriano's leading in the governor's primary, and it's just like, hold on, why are these like primary candidates so wildly different for governor versus Senate?
Well, I think Mastriano, he's like Sean Parnell would have been in the Senate, in that they both had national name recognition because they were using social media. Plus, they were getting interviewed by I don't know that Mastriano's been interviewed by Tucker, but people in that vein, people that were questioning the election. Both Parnell and Mastriano were out there. And I think, despite what you might hear in other places, election integrity is probably the biggest issue for most Republicans that I know here in Pennsylvania. So they're going to go towards someone like Mastriano. There's not really that equivalent on the Senate side. And in the Senate, so because that name recognition of someone fighting sort of corruption hasn't came out as much, I think what you're seeing is the people that are the big spenders are able to get their name out there. Mastriano, look, they won't tell you this, but there is scuttlebutt that I hear that a lot of the sort of establishment, run-of-the-mill Republicans, like your commissioners and stuff like that, they don't like the fact that Mastriano is sort of running a campaign outside of them. They would rather someone contact them and run through them. And so it's going to be interesting because you have this sort of anti-establishment wave for the Republican voters, but the Republican machinery wants someone that maybe has a part of that, but also is willing to say we need to work within, that predefined system.
Yeah. It's interesting. We don't have any like real hotly contested GOP primaries here in Montana. We do have some contested U.S. House primaries. Montana just picked up our second House seat after the census. Montana is one of the states that got an extra congressman. So we're going from a single at-large seat to now 2 districts here in Montana. So that'll be interesting to sort of see who that one's. Although we've got the guy that was Ryan Zinke was Interior Secretary under Trump. He's running, and he's kind of the clear favorite. And then we've got our sitting Congressman Matt Rosendale, who's going to run in the Eastern District. And then we don't have a Senate seat up, and we don't have a governor's race up this year. So kind of slower here in Montana. So I've kind of been more focused in other states. The Pennsylvania one's
Just
interesting.
Yeah, it definitely, and I'll just say this real quick. The Democrat that's running for governor is Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is someone who wants to make a political career. He's someone that you will see eventually run for a cabinet position if a Democrat wins, or may choose to run for president or vice president in the future. So it's going to be very interesting looking at sort of the gamesmanship of politics. Can Shapiro be stopped? He's a radical. He's terrible. He's the attorney general under Governor Wolf. He's been in charge of many of these lockdowns, of the policies of putting COVID patients in nursing homes, et cetera, et cetera. So, it'll be very interesting. And, I think that you're seeing in that gubernatorial race, you're seeing people already in the Republican side reaching out to Democrat voters in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia that are furious about those lockdowns and stuff. And they're going to try to make that a point of contention.
Good. Well, I mean, I've always thought of, Pennsylvania was never even in play in the presidential elections until Trump. I mean, I always thought of Pennsylvania as sort of like a safe blue seat, because going back to the 90s, I don't think a Republican had won that since, Reagan maybe, or something like that. Like, it had been a long time since a Republican had won Pennsylvania, until Donald Trump. So I'm interested to see where Pennsylvania goes here in 2022, just because of, now Pennsylvania is a swing state essentially at this point, it feels like to me. I think
it definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Pennsylvania is strange. I happen to know the most about it because I've lived here all my life. So I don't know as much about other states. Pennsylvania is weird because we have the East and the West. You have Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and then Erie sort of up in the West, up north. Everything else, people joke, they call it Pennsyltucky, right? Very red, very rural in the center there. And so the question then, what comes down to usually like the turnout that you have in Philadelphia and the suburbs in Pittsburgh. And the suburbs in Pittsburgh have always been sort of centrist, willing to go either way. They seem to be leaning red. We see voter registration. Republicans are picking up a lot of steam here in Pennsylvania. And listen, Tom Wolf's been terrible. And I think that's a great chance for Republicans to be able to reach out and say, listen, these lockdown liberals, you saw what they did. It doesn't matter if you traditionally vote for, you're a union person or something like that. None of that matters if you can't go to work. And that's what the Democrats plan to keep doing. So the Democrats are going to push, Shapiro's first ads are already pushing January 6th. Crazy conspiracy theories that want to challenge the election. So I think that's a win for Republicans. I think that even the average independent and Democrat, the Democrats, and maybe we'll talk about this, they continually as a party try to push things like January 6th or Russia collusion that basically even their base doesn't care about.
Right. No, it's amazing. So I actually realized this just this weekend. I was watching Meet the Press. I watch the Sunday shows just for old time's sake and just to laugh at the mainstream media and to criticize it, and people like it. But I realized watching Meet the Press this Sunday that, wow, the Democrats are actually going to run the midterm campaign is going to be an anti-Trump campaign. That's their strategy. Their 2022 strategy is Trump, 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 anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. And they made that crystal clear, these Democrats that they had on Meet the Press, and of course the media operatives on there and stuff too. And they were talking about how that's basically the strategy. And then I was like, oh, so that's why the media is still obsessing about Trump 24/7. And like, Trump hasn't been in office for over a year, and we've got one of the biggest disasters in the White House of all time and some of the most horrific stuff happening in the country. And the media is still like running stories about Trump did this or Trump said that or January 6th that. Nobody cares about January 6th at all. It's crazy. But that's their actual strategy for 2022. I think it's a failing strategy, because I think the American people are going to be like, dude, nobody cares about Donald Trump. And in fact, actually, we look back on how life was under Trump, and it was actually pretty darn good. So like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, it's very difficult. What would you run on if you're them? In
right.
Every aspect, the Democrats, look, what you see in the country right now, we have the executive is controlled by the Democrats, the House and the Senate are controlled by the Democrats in effect. So what are they going to run on? Domestically, it's been a disaster. The reason that they were able to pick up as much as they did in 2020 was because of COVID. Well, they've been even worse on COVID. So that hasn't worked. The economy's terrible. Foreign policy-wise, is anyone with a straight face going to argue that we have less tensions across the world now with the Democrat control than we did under Republicans or Trump? Of course not. So but it's weird because there are, if I was a strategist, if they hired me, there are things that they could try to do, right? Just because you've been a disaster on something, you could say, well, that's because of external factors. Now here's our plan with the economy going forward. But this is what they did for years, even when Trump was in office. Every news station that you turned on was talking about Russia collusion, Russia collusion, Russia collusion. When they polled Democrats, it was like their 9th most important issue. And,
Right.
and so
Right.
you know, the two big issues they were running on before the Ukraine situation was sort of January 6th and Trump, and then voter suppression. And neither of those rank in the top 5 of Democrats in
Right.
consistent polling. So it seems odd, but you know, it matches up with stories that I'm reading, and I'm sure you're reading them too, that basically says the scuttlebutt is that people within the Biden administration and the Democratic apparatus are ready for a shellacking, that they just basically are like, we don't know what to do. Like, we're going to get crushed in the midterms.
No, that was there was actually, I had a story here from New York Magazine, the Intelligencer, that I was going to bring up as a topic. It was about AOC saying that she was right about Joe Manchin and that Dems are in huge trouble. And so, you know, yeah, you're right. That's all you're seeing, but it's like, you got to be so careful about getting overconfident and stuff. But yeah, all these articles every day, everybody's talking about how Dems are in huge trouble. But then it's like, it almost seems like they don't care, especially because you look at, you know, immigration and the border, that actually being a very high priority issue for a lot of Americans. I mean, that immigration and the border actually polls very highly when you ask people, what do you care about? And Biden is about to get rid of Title 42, which is going to cause a huge spike in this was another crazy thing that happened on Meet the Press. Is one of these Democrat media operatives was talking about how, yeah, you know, this title, if Biden gets rid of this Title 42, then that could cause some problems, because, you know, there's the Republicans and the Republican base, you know, they care a lot about the border, and they care a lot about immigration and illegal immigration and stuff like that. But once you start talking about human trafficking, then you start to pick up the independents too. And it's like, really? So you don't get Democrats when you start bringing up human trafficking? It's like, no, you can literally like talk about how this is causing human trafficking at the border, and that's not even enough to get Democrats to really be concerned about our open border, even though there's like legitimate human trafficking being caused because it's a wide open border and the opportunities there.
Yeah, and I think that, again, you see this with Hispanics. Hispanics are sort of, in many places, are equaling out as Republican voters, or heavily going that way. In some places like Florida, it seems to suggest that Hispanics are actually more Republican at this point. And that's devastating. That's absolutely devastating for the Democrats, and they know it. Where they're picking up is sort of suburban women, right? White women. That's where Democrats picked up in 2020. But they're losing their share of minority votes, like the Black vote, and particularly the Hispanic vote. The reality is, people think that, oh, well, the Hispanics must favor small taxes or other things like that. And that might be true. I think Hispanics tend to be more conservative than even the white population on average. But one of the big issues when you talk to legal Hispanics here is the border. They know, right? They understand. They see what's happening. Whether you're a first-generation immigrant or you're a third-generation immigrant, you came here the right way. You see the problems, and you probably live in communities where a lot of these traffickers and things like that are coming. So there was that one county in Texas, for example, that's overwhelmingly Hispanic that went Republican for the first time. And the reason is they're being inundated with all of this human trafficking, drug smuggling, cartel wars right across the border. We have cartel. And so it's the story that the media one of the things the media is very clever at doing, and the Democrats are burying stories, the sin of omission. And to me, it's one of the biggest stories out there that even I should be talking about more.
Yeah. Well, so why do you think, so I guess like two points here first, and I'll get your take on this. So the first one, I don't know, did you see that Biden extended the student loan payment pause? And I don't know if you're following the student loan story, but the Democrats have just been hammering Biden. You need to extend this into next year. And the Democrats have been sending letters from Congress and really hammering Biden, saying, extend this all the way through next year. And of course, it's like, I wonder why Democrats would want the student loan, payment moratorium extended through next year. What's that about? And, okay. But then Biden only extends it though to August. And so is Biden really going to demoralize the Democrat base by forcing 40 million people to restart their student loan payments in August when he literally, I guess we're at a situation in our country now where the president just gets to decide whether people have to pay back their student loans or not. But like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why would Biden extend the payment pause, but only to August? Why wouldn't he do what the Democrats really wanted him to do, which is put it out until January? Why won't he do the executive loan forgiveness to try to help Democrats? And then why would he get rid of this Title 42 mechanism that's been a critical component of our border security ever since the pandemic began? And why would Biden then, because they're saying that right now we're getting like 5,000 to 7,000 illegal immigrant encounters at the border every day. And that is predicted to go up to 18,000 to 20,000 a day. It's going to cause this massive border crisis by getting rid of Title 42. Like, what is Biden thinking on all of this stuff? Does he not care about the midterms? And then we got to get into the stuff about how now all of a sudden the media is confirming all of this Biden corruption. Like, what is going on? Is there a war going on? Are they trying to get rid of Biden? And is Biden like trying to like fight back by saying, I'm not going to do these things that are going to help the party in the midterms? Like, do you have any thoughts on any of that stuff?
Yeah, so the student loan, two possible explanations. Well, first, I'll just say this. Biden doesn't make any decisions. Unfortunately, he's an old man with dementia. So there's some strategy going on with the people behind him, right? Biden, I saw a video today. The poor guy couldn't find his way around at the podium where he's just wandering aimlessly today. It's sad. It really is. It's sad. And we are as close to World War III as we've been in my entire life. And we have a person as the figurehead that basically doesn't know where he's at half the time. It's a sad, dark time for the United States. So just some potentials to answer your first question on the student loans. Two possibilities that I could think of. One, they want a sort of October surprise, but maybe in August. And so they think, if we redo this in August, then it'll be fresh in people's minds. So young people will go out and vote Democrat. Or it could be the opposite. It could be that they want people to say, well, hey, the president can't do anything anymore. So you have to vote for Democrats if you want your student loans forgiven so they can do something in Congress. That would be my initial thoughts.
So force everybody to start repaying their student loans in August, so then they get like, oh my gosh, if you don't want to pay this anymore, go vote. But otherwise, we're going to force you. The Republicans are going to force you to pay, even though Biden is the one that did it.
Yeah, I mean, it's right, you remember when, vote for Warnock and vote for Biden, and we'll send you $1,600. And then you voted for him, and they're like, well, actually, we're only going to send you like, what was it, like 900 or something. We met 1,600 with the stuff that Trump. I mean, we really. I mean, it's laughable, but at some point we need to decide as a nation: are we going to allow? Like, there's no mechanism to say you can't just be like, we'll give you free stuff if you vote for us. The border thing. I mean, my answer to this is, it makes sense if you realize what their agenda is. And their agenda is to basically harm the working class people of this country and make everyone rely on the government. And they want new workers that they'll be able to pay less, that won't upset the apple cart when, yelling about things like the Bill of Rights and free speech and things like that. And so everything from the lockdowns to the open borders and things like that has been geared at harming the American worker. And I don't like... People say, oh, well, you just want Americans to continue to look like Americans. I don't care what we look like. The Hispanic immigrant that's a legal citizen, this is their country every bit as much as mine. They don't like that person either. It has nothing to do with skin color. It's that they want malleable people that they could bring in so they can flood the labor market so that our wages all go down in addition with inflation. And they can say, that's okay, the government will step in and take care of you. So that's what I think the Title 42 thing is. I don't know what you think about that, but that's,
You think they're just Biden's just making the calculation like, okay, even though me getting rid of Title 42 is going to harm the Democrats in the midterm elections, the benefits of allowing this many more illegal aliens into the country outweighs it.
Well, I don't think they think it'll harm them as much. I think that, you have to ask yourself, what's their strategy going to be? Right now, this isn't a national election, so it's not an election for president. So they might have said, listen, we're going to take some losses. We get that. We're not going to pull a victory out of this. But if we energize our base, maybe we could win more than we otherwise would have lost. And this would be seen as, as mad as sort of the progressive wing would be about the student loan thing. This is something they would heavily cheer for. They would say, great, get rid of Title 42. So maybe they're making a calculus. Look, long term, this fits right in with our sort of globalist agenda. And short term, this will mobilize a section of our base because, I don't know how many panels and stuff you're doing, but there's a lot of progressives that are furious at Biden. They don't think that he's been progressive enough. AOC would be one of them, right? And
Totally,
so
yeah.
this maybe is an olive branch to them to maybe say, look, don't get this, don't get displeased, don't stay home.
Totally.
So,
yeah, I think I think that's actually probably the right explanation is that it's Biden trying to jazz up the base, because the Democrat base really is pretty unhappy with Biden. I mean they promised all of these different things and they haven't accomplished anything. And then I love it when you, like, some of these leftists, they actually with a straight face will argue that Biden has good accomplishments because he got Congress to pass a blowout spending package. It's like, dude, Congress passes $1 trillion spending packages like left and right. Like every couple of months they pass a blowout $1 trillion spending package. Like that's not an accomplishment of Biden. Like he's done nothing. They can't get anything through. Their federal election, corrupt election takeover failed. Immigration reform failed. Down the list, everything that progressives have wanted, they haven't been able to get it through because thankfully we've got a couple of senators on the left side of the aisle here that are not as insane as the rest of them. So I think the Democrats have a big time problem in terms of motivating their voters to get out, and that's probably a big part of why Democrats are so worried about the election. Now, of course, the other thing is that Biden's job approval right now in the RCP average, 54 disapprove, 41 approve, and I saw somebody made a really good point, is that you don't get into the low 40s in an approval rating unless you're losing your own party.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And listen, in a time of, granted, a sort of proxy war, but usually things like that give you a bump, right? Like the country kind of rallies behind. You'd see this with Bush after 9/11, right? When a big foreign policy thing like that happened. So even with that, to see him so low, I mean, yeah, that's certainly true. And I find it odd. I don't understand how any Democrat could be happy with this. They do their best. They try to, I've had many debates with intelligent Democrats, and they try their best to argue that he's done well. Right. Like you said about the budget, that's the first thing they bring up. Like, right. Let's do this little exercise. Now, granted, if it was Trump, he could have vetoed it, right? Theoretically. But let's assume that the president somehow would have been just literally a rubber stamp that wasn't doing anything, wasn't pushing for anything, was like, I'll sign any bill that comes out. Is there any doubt that this budget wouldn't have looked the exact same? I mean, what did Biden do? He did nothing. He did nothing. The people behind the scenes in the Senate, I mean, Pelosi and Schumer deserve more credit if you think that budget's good. I don't think the budget's good, but if you're a Democrat happy with the budget, do you really think that it came down to Joe Biden, whipping up votes? The only thing Joe Biden was whipping up was topping for his pudding. I assure you, he had no connection whatsoever. And nonetheless, like you said, that's your big achievement. Look, I would be happy to eat crow and say, wow, this budget did great. It really helped the American people. It helped our infrastructure. It did this, this, and this. We're not going to know that until 5 years down the road. Now, the reality is it won't help, much like all of these big spending bills. It won't go to the infrastructure and stuff they claim. But I would be happy to eat crow because I'm a fan of the United States. But how could you tout that as an achievement? And it really goes to show you where a lot of the Democrats' head is. The achievement is just we spent a lot. That's the achievement. Right. What's the greatest achievement? Wow, we spent a lot of money. Right, with no results so far.
Other than inflation.
There will be results. That's right. And so, I mean, it's just, and the progressives, hey, I'm no fan of the progressive ideology. I'm not. But I warned them. I said the worst thing for you is to elect Joe Biden or someone like Hillary Clinton. Because once you elect them, they're going to ignore everything you said. If Trump was still in office, then we would at least see the media and people paying lip service to the progressives, right? Because then it would, and you would hear those issues. But once Biden was there, all of a sudden, we don't really hear about Black Lives Matter, except, their corruption, spending millions of dollars. All of a sudden, we don't hear about the student loan stuff. All of this stuff, Medicare for all of this stuff that the progressives wanted, now it's on the back burner because they made a mistake. They voted for a corporatist sort of run-of-the-mill Democrat that's been there for 47 years, and they thought radical change was going to happen. So, yeah, you're right. It's that 41%. There's an awful lot of progressives that aren't happy with them. My question is, who are these 41%? And the reality is, I'll tell you who they are, and I guess it kind of makes sense with what we talked about earlier. They're people that hate Trump. And so it's like anyone who's not Trump is good. They're not going to admit, okay, we picked a really bad choice. They'll continue to say, but Trump would have been worse, so I think Biden's doing good. Not because he's good, but because the boogeyman Trump was bad. That's why I suspect people are saying they like Biden.
Yeah. So, okay. So what's funny though is about that. I've got the latest numbers from the RCP averages. One thing that blew me away is RCP has the average favorability ratings for the president, the vice president, Donald Trump, congressional leaders and stuff. Donald Trump has a higher net favorability rating right now than either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. And sure, he's out of office and that his numbers go up when he leaves office and stuff like that. But I was stunned by that. Trump having a higher favorability rating than Biden and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is just so bad. She's bringing the Biden administration down. The right track, wrong track poll, 65% say we're on the wrong track. 27% say we're on the right track. Congressional job approval, 68% disapprove, 22% approve. And then I looked at the generic congressional ballot again. The GOP is still leading the generic congressional ballot, which that sort of flipped here the last couple of months. We've talked about that before. For the first time ever, the GOP is leading in the congressional ballot. So I think you look at Biden's job approval, the right track, wrong track, the generic congressional ballot, how just horrible the progressives feel. And the Biden administration is so weird because it's like Biden won't stand up to the radical left, but he's also like not really accomplishing anything for them. So he's getting the worst of both worlds. Like he's getting all of the flack and the sort of attacks because of he's nominating progressives. I mean, his nominees have all been, straight down the line hardcore radical left progressives. And he supports these radical left bills, Build Back Better, the federal elections takeover bills, all of this crap that's really, but yet in actual like reality and actual change and stuff, like he's not accomplishing anything that any of these people set out for. And then the AOCs are mad because Joe Manchin exists. And it's like, sorry, progressives, Joe Manchin, he's a U.S. senator. Like, sorry. I know you hate Joe Manchin, but he's a U.S. senator. Get over it.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you nail it. He's in this weird between a rock and a hard place, right? And,
yeah,
I think, my big issue is corruption. I see that there's corruption with our establishment all over the place. But I think one of the things that I forget sometimes, in addition to that corruption, is just outright incompetence. And you can see it, like, look at Kamala Harris, right? Like, it's incredible incompetence. Biden maybe at one point had the wherewithal to be president, even if I would have disagreed with him. But those days are long gone. He's declining health, declining mental faculties. Pete Buttigieg, you listen to him. He's someone that I would have said 2016, 2018. He seemed smart, even if I disliked him and I thought he was disingenuous. Now to listen to him talk, it's unbelievable. And it's almost like they just thought, and I think there is a lot of truth to this. Listen, we don't really have to try anymore. The lesson of the 2020 election was Joe Biden didn't campaign basically the last 2 months. And the corporate media and the intel agencies that were signing, 47 of them signing, all these stories about Biden are infactual, the Hunter Biden laptop. So I think that they just thought, whatever, all we care about is power, and those institutions will drag us across the finish line. And I don't think they expected it to be as hard as it is. And now, it's blowing up in their face. And the average person that maybe would have listened to Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert or, Jake Tapper before is like, yeah, that's all well and good. I can't pay my rent.
Right.
There's a crisis at the border. And so, homicides are going up in cities, fentanyl overdoses, like this stuff's affecting everyone. And so now they're just kind of like, oh, we don't really have a plan. And you can see it when you hear Jen Psaki just saying, it's Peter Doocy asked her that time, was like, is the White House's plan just until the midterm to just blame Russia for everything? Yes, right. That's literally their plan. They don't have solutions. So at this point, they're, relegated to just saying, well, it's not our fault.
Right.
It's all COVID. It's all Russia.
Of course,
and
then, of course, censoring anybody that disagrees with them. That's one of their main strategies, right, is because they can't win the actual arguments, and so they have to rely on censorship. But I agree with you on the corruption thing. Speaking of which, couple of points on that. Amazing to see the New York Times and the Washington Post both in the last month confirm that yes, the Hunter Biden laptop is real. Yes, we've been able to validate every single one of the emails on that laptop. So you find they oh, here's Hunter's laptop. Okay, let's see. Pull up an email. Okay, that email is to Joe Blow. Okay, go to Joe Blow. Joe Blow's like, hey, do you have an email? Yeah, he pulls it up on his phone. The exact same email right on his phone. You know, it's like, okay, obviously this has been like confirmed. And so now Washington Post and New York Times both, and I don't know if you've seen the Washington Post article. I highly recommend reading it. It came out like a month and a half ago, or not a month, like a week and a half ago. And the same with the New York Times. But they're basically, and they're like the Washington Post ran an entire piece on Hunter Biden's dealings with our foreign adversaries and talking about how millions and millions of dollars were flowing into Hunter Biden's entities and all this stuff, and that Joe Biden was sort of implicated in a lot of it. And I was kind of blown away to see the mainstream media finally do that. And I just thought, like, what is going on? Like, is the New York Times? This is where I'm like wondering: are they actually trying to take out Joe Biden? Are they trying to get Joe Biden to leave office? Because honestly, when you look at the stuff that's on the Hunter Biden laptop, where and all of the other stuff that the Senate GOP has disclosed about all of these, we've got bank documents literally showing $1 million going to Hunter Biden from our foreign adversaries, you know, and we've got all of this proof and this evidence that Joe Biden was literally selling his office and selling his influence, and Hunter Biden was getting rich off of it. And then there was another story about how the Secret Service is spending $30,000 a month to rent a house in Malibu so that they can protect Hunter Biden. And so it's like, to me, this is impeachable stuff. Like Joe Biden's corrupt, and we have proof of it. And he's lied multiple times about this, and he knew everything that was going on with Hunter's foreign business dealings. And now that we've, you know, that it's amazing. Of course, we can talk about how the censorship and the lies about the Hunter laptop and how much, you know, the misinformation from the American left makes Putin blush. But it's just so bad. But I mean, what's going on with the mainstream media? Do you think, like, finally confirming the Hunter laptop story and everything that's there?
So I think that there's a couple possible explanations. The first is you always see this is the play that you see from our establishment Democrats, the media, the tech companies, intel agencies over and over, which is they call you a crazy conspiracy theorist. They want you censored, if not outright censored, just brushed off as a conspiracy theorist. And then once it can no longer harm them, they're like, oh, okay, I guess there was some truth to that, but that was a while ago. You know, the hashtag believe all women. What about Juanita Broadway? Yeah, I guess we should have did something back then. Oh, well, it's over with now. And it's not like Bill Clinton's with the Democrats anymore. Really? He's speaking at the women's rallies, right? That's what he's with Kamala Harris speaking. So, you know, they always, when they think that it no longer affects them, they're like, well, now we can tell the truth. So I think there's some of that. They would rather it come out now than in 2024 if Biden's running, right? So now this story hypothetically won't harm the run-of-the-mill Democrat running for, you know, a Senate seat, but it'll harm Joe Biden. So that's number one. Number two, I think that maybe they realize that Biden's an albatross. And so this is part of their way of being like, look, we're just going to show the Biden administration, we're going to keep going hard until he makes the decision to say, I'm not going to run again in 2024. I'm getting old. You know, I have some slight medical problems. I think that's part of it. The other option, I'll just say real quick, is I would be shocked if Biden's DOJ ends up doing anything of substance to Hunter Biden. I would think that he'll probably plead guilty to failing to register as a foreign lobbyist or something like that. And then the DOJ and the intel agencies and the media will say, there we go. Yep, we covered it. We looked into it. That's all it was. A harmless, didn't register as a foreign lobbyist. No connections to Joe Biden or the Democrats. See, we talked about it. Now let it go, which we shouldn't do. And again, the story is bad. We could spend 2 hours talking about the story, but I'll just say this. It might be that the cover-up was worse because as much as Russia could have influenced an election or China, no one has the ability to influence our election like the U.S. media, corporations, tech companies, and our intel agencies. And all four of them combined to influence the election right before 2020. And that is not a free and fair election. They want to talk about Viktor Orban in Hungary not being a free and fair election. You didn't see this level of collusion of all the major institutions in Hungary like you did in the United States. So it's really bad. And Republicans better stand up and hold people to account, or this stuff will happen over and over again in perpetuity every election year.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. They did the same thing with the Russia hoax. Oh, we got the FBI agent. We got one FBI agent that lied on a form. Oh, okay, done. Although I still don't think that story's done. Did you see that the Hillary Clinton campaign had to pay a fine for falsely reporting money they spent on the Steele dossier?
Yeah, it's outrageous. When you talk to people, right, that want to keep bringing up Trump-Russia collusion in the Mueller report, they'll say stuff like this. Why did Manafort initially lie? He's a scumbag. He wasn't colluding with Russia, but he was trying to capitalize on his position, no doubt. And that's on Trump for having a scumbag to be his campaign manager. But if we want to talk about lies, remember, the Steele dossier for a year, the DNC and the Hillary camp were saying, we didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't until it started to come out, they were like, okay, we paid for it. And now we're just now getting to 5 years after we learned that, where they're actually paying fines because that was campaign stuff. Now, remember, I was told that the whole thing is just nonsensical. The allegation was we needed to investigate Trump for trying to get dirt on his opponent, Hillary Clinton, from Russians. So how did they seek to prove that? By the Hillary Clinton camp working with Russian spies to get dirt on Trump. And it's all coming out now, and they just want to bury it. They want it to go away. The Durham filing is incredible that shows that there was a tech executive, Rodney Joffe, who was paid or who was working with Sussman, the lawyer that was working with the Hillary camp, that was exploiting data that they had access to, working with Georgia Tech, students at Georgia Tech, to concoct the Trump-Russia collusion story.
Yeah.
The whole thing started as a campaign strategy from the Hillary team.
It is. I mean, it's staggering. I mean, especially for people like me and you that follow that stuff closely, whether it's the Trump-Russia hoax that from the beginning to the end, whether it's the Hunter Biden laptop. It seems like all of that stuff, like we've been right on it all along, right? We've been talking about this stuff for years. We were considered conspiracy theories, and we've been 100% proven right now. Even the Washington Post and the New York Times, now admitting we're right. The Hillary Clinton campaign paying $100,000 plus fine to the FEC for falsely reporting money they spent to get the Steele dossier. They falsely labeled that money and lied about that. And I'm just like, all of this stuff coming out, this seems to me like this should be huge news. This should be what everybody's talking about. This should be front page breaking news. Like the Republicans should be talking about this stuff on the campaign trail for the midterm elections, talking about, look at this. Look at how corrupt the Democrats were. I always thought the 2020 election, the most important thing about the 2020 election was whether or not the American people would say that we're okay with a corrupt Democrat Party using law enforcement and intelligence agencies to spy on a political opponent and make up hoaxes. And now, and whether as an American people we're comfortable with a corrupted, compromised president who literally would sell America down the river for $1 million to our foreign adversaries. And now both of those things have been confirmed, and it's like nobody's really talking about it. I don't understand it. This should be like the number one thing. It feels like to me.
Two things to say. One, I think there are probably Republicans at the top level, establishment level Republicans that are probably involved in some shadiness themselves. And there's always been this sort of mutually assured destruction where it's like, well, if we come out and talk about the corruption of the Clinton Foundation, then maybe they'll come out and talk about the corruption of whatever shenanigans they have going on. So that could be part of it. The other thing is strategically, maybe Republicans are like, listen, we're winning on all the substantive issues. We're winning on the economy. We're winning on foreign policy. We're winning on sort of the border policies, even these cultural issues, which I'm very impressed
winning
with,
big time, yeah.
The Don't Groom Children bill in Florida, there, right? Like that's massively popular, even with Democrats, even
hugely
Democrats,
popular, yeah. I mean, you read that No, I mean, I think you're right. We're absolutely winning on the substance on these issues, and you're right that the polling on the Florida bill is incredibly popular. I mean, it's a parental rights bill that literally just says that, hey, if a school is gonna do like health plans or whatever, they need to tell the parents. That's one part of it. The other part of it is you can't teach adult sexual content to little first graders. And it's like then you poll the American people and everyone's like, no, of course not. Of course, school teachers shouldn't be teaching little first graders and second graders about adult sexual content. That's the most perverted thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, Democrats are gotten so extreme on these social issues, and the social issues have gotten so out of hand. And frankly, I mean, I think you're starting to see even. I mean, the problem is that there's so much censorship on those issues. Those are issues you can't talk about. There's a couple of issues out there where Democrats and the left, they will not allow you to talk about them openly and freely. So that's one of the reasons I don't debate the transgender issue on Twitch, because Twitch doesn't allow free speech on that topic. And I'm a conservative and a traditional conservative at that. So it's like, you think I'm going to go on and like debate homosexuality or transgender or something like that? I'd be banned on Twitch so freaking fast. And yet what's really going on out there amongst the American people is the left has gotten so extreme on this stuff and now pushing transgender ideology on little kids and schools. You know what led to the Florida bill? The Florida bill started because there was 13 counties in Florida that had policies on their books where the schools would help little kids transition their gender, and they had policies to not tell the parents about putting those kids through social transgender transition things. And that's just mind-boggling, and that's what Democrats, they're openly arguing for it. It's like, wow.
And one of the strategies we see when you have all of the institutions on your side, like the Democrats currently do, you're able to shape the narrative. You could ignore the border story. You could ignore the corruption story. And it's very difficult to crack into that. Even people like us end up talking about what we hear in these mainstream outlets. And, I think both me and you try to focus on the stories that they're not covering, but that's just the reality. And one of the things they do is they just lie about these bills. For example, remember the big bill, the Georgia voting bill that caused Major League Baseball to move the All-Star game? When people actually read the text of that bill, it was popular. It was a popular bill. But they tried to make it seem like, oh, this is to disenfranchise Black people. It wasn't. One of the big reasons they said it was to disenfranchise Black people was because it shortened voting hours on Sunday. That wasn't true. It massively increased voting hours on Sunday because the argument was Black people were more likely to be at church. And so anyways, it's the same with this Florida bill. They just lied. They said, oh, it says don't say gay. It doesn't. It doesn't say that. And I think people are waking up to say the word gay is not even in the bill.
Right.
One of the things we need to learn to do as conservatives is to control language the same way they do. So I don't call it the Don't Say Gay bill. If I'm invited on a panel to talk about the Don't Say Gay bill, I'm going to say, I don't know what that is. Oh, do you mean the Don't Groom Children bill? Yeah, I know what that is. Can you explain to me why you're for grooming children? And that's the way we should play the game.
Amen.
If you're
Amen.
And I don't want to hear, but it doesn't say grooming in the bill. Doesn't matter. That's the context of the bill, to not groom children. Clearly you're for it. Clearly Disney's for grooming children. Clearly these Democrats nationally are for grooming children. And I hope, if the Democrats think, well, you know what, instead of Russia and January 6th and Trump is our main issue, we're going to go for this Don't Say Gay bill. I hope they do that, because that is a loser. And the American people, even people that traditionally vote Democrat, are like, enough is enough. And this is the irony. Like, you see tons of people that are like, I'm a Democrat who's gay. This bill doesn't say don't say gay. There is no reason to talk to K through third graders about this stuff. So, hey, I'm all for it if the Dems want to run on this issue.
It seems like the Dems are imploding. They're going crazy on so much of it. And the Dems, I feel like they're like the Biden administration. I mean, the Biden administration is like a microcosm of the entire Democrat Party, where Biden's not really an extremist deep down. He doesn't believe in any of this radical stuff, but he is so scared of the radical left base that he's pushing all of this radical left stuff. And it's the same with the party and a lot of their candidates. They're terrified of their own base because their own base is so vicious, and they'll rip anybody apart and they'll turn on anybody in a second. And so they're pushing this sort of radical view, even though they themselves don't believe it, and even though that they know that it's bad for politics. Hey, we got 15 minutes left here. Let's do some quick hits. Did you see that Biden signed the anti-lynching bill?
Yeah, thank goodness.
Isn't that? Yeah, we got such a
street. Yeah.
I know, it's such a major problem in this country. Like, oh my, and there's so many people that are in favor of lynching. I mean, thank goodness the Democrats focused on that. It's like, really? Who's in favor of lynching?
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Remember, this was a bill that Kamala Harris was pushing when the Jussie Smollett thing came about, and there's a lot of sort of theories going around that was part of what Smollett was thinking, whether he'd been in contact with Kamala or not, which was, oh, see, we need a bill like this because even a famous black man like Jussie Smollett. And so, yeah, it's just, how many of these I mean, you can count the number of times on a hand that there's been actual racist attacks like that have been reported nationally. 90% of them, it seems, that are reported nationally. Oh, swastika drilling on the bathroom of this school ends up being a hoax. Someone that was left-leaning or someone that was Jewish or black ended up doing it for sort of this victimhood culture. So that's all this is. It's trying to go with their narrative that this is a super racist country, and they're like, we're doing something about it. They're not. Black Americans are worse off under the Democrat and the Biden administration. Homicides are going up. If we really cared about Black America, we'd be fighting inflation. We'd be concerned about working with America first, and we would be trying to do what we could to stop these violent crimes that are occurring in the inner city. And it ain't lynching.
No kidding. And, oh, by the way, lynching was already illegal, Democrats. I don't know if you guys know that, but lynching was already illegal. So speaking of which, gas prices and inflation, obviously a huge deal in the midterms. That only hurts Democrats as far as I can tell. You disagree with that?
No, I totally agree. And the American people are smarter than the Biden administration's giving them credit for. You know, CBS, the day that Russia invaded, CBS put an article out that said gas prices going up because of Russia invasion. Well, no, the gas prices went up. For example, the February CPI numbers that came out, the inflation numbers, that the most recent we have is February. That was pre-Russia invasion, right? And so all of those gas price increases that you saw, that was on the Biden administration. Furthermore, let me just say this. Regardless of the Russia situation is complicated. I get that, right? But let's be clear. I don't understand why Biden doesn't get blame for that as well. Like, he's just like acting like, oh, well, you know, that's not on my hands. What happened to the buck stops here? You know, the sanctions and stuff like that. We heard the Biden administration saying these sanctions were intended to prevent that invasion. Whatever you think, the policies of this Biden administration led an invasion from Russia occurred while they were there. So why all of a sudden is it like, oh, well, if we could use the word Russia, then that means that voters shouldn't blame us. Voters are smarter than that. They're not going to fall for this. And listen, I'm hoping that those gas price numbers go down because I'm seeing people in my neighborhood that are struggling to pay bills. So to me, it's not, oh boy, it's an election issue. I hope that it can. I'm not going to Bill Maher it here and go, I'm cheering for a recession.
No, I agree.
But
I agree.
If the numbers get worse, it's going to be worse for the Democrats.
No, and I saw some, I think it was either some polling or something that basically said that the American people recognize that the out-of-control federal spending is a big cause of the inflation too. And so I think that goes hand in hand with what you're saying. Like, they can try to blame COVID, they can try to blame Russia, but the American people are like, well, Biden, you halted the pipeline, you halted American pipelines, you halted American oil drilling, you did blowout federal spending, we've got deficits and debt as far as the eye can see. And you're going to try to blame inflation and high gas prices on COVID and Russia. That's not going to work. And frankly, the American people should punish the Democrats for the high gas prices and the inflation, because a lot of the gas prices is because of the global warming regulations that Democrats have been putting on our society and sanctioning American oil and being anti-fossil fuel. And it's like, dude, I get that you guys are worried about, global warming, but my electricity bill and my natural gas bill and my fuel bill for my vehicle is just outrageous, hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month higher than it should be, and it's all because of this global warming nonsense. And frankly, I've always thought that Republicans need to be very, very clear on this issue and talk to the American people and ask the American people, are you willing to lose money? Are you willing to have money taken away from you, all because of this global warming fanaticism of the left?
Just real quick, like, imagine where we'd have been if 10 years ago Republicans had been making that case. We would have been expanding the clean energy, including fracking, natural gas, things like that, in the United States so much that we could be exporting to our European allies. Then we wouldn't be beholden to Russia like we are. We would have it's cleaner than the stuff that Russia is going to export. And we wouldn't be looking at possibly the end of the petrodollar, which is, if you think that things are bad now, wait until that happens. Right. And there would have been still a gradual, as things became profitable, there would have been a gradual shift to cleaner energy, whether it be cleaner fossil fuels, nuclear, or even the sort of renewable energy that Democrats want. But instead, they virtue signal. And you can see this everywhere. They do this with everything. So while they were telling us that Americans needed to suffer a little, you needed to sacrifice more, As soon as we're in a pinch, we're calling the OPEC countries like, can you send us more?
Right.
Can you send us more fossil fuels?
Right.
I mean, it's a joke. It really is.
It's pathetic. I mean, it's honestly outrageous, especially when we've got fuel and we've got fossil fuels here in the United States. I mean, and then Biden, canceling American pipelines, but then saying Nord Stream 2 could go ahead. And then when Russia invades, saying, oh, never mind. No, you can't have Nord Stream 2. It's like, well, if you're not going to let Russia have Nord Stream 2 because he invaded Ukraine, then why did you let him have it in the first place? Like, Trump was able to stop Nord Stream 2, even though it was already mostly built, and he was still able to successfully stop it but then Biden did it because, whatever, he wants to help Germany or whatever his stupid reasons are, but then immediately backtracks and says, oh, never mind. Actually, you can't have Nord Stream 2. And it's like, okay, wow.
And here's the thing, right? Everyone has a different take foreign policy-wise. We don't have a lot of time. I'll just say this. You don't aggressively posture against your enemy if you're reliant on them. So for the United States and Europe to be like, we're going to keep provoking Russia. We're going to keep provoking them. And then Russia's like, okay, well, we're invading now. Now what are you going to do? And they're in this awkward position where it's like, well, we're going to sanction you, but not your energy exports. Could you please get... I mean, one of the most nonsensical things I heard was, you remember at the beginning of this, where the official Biden administration take was, well, we're sanctioning Russia, but we're also working with them diplomatically to seal up the Iran deal. Like, this is how ridiculous things have become, where it's like, you put yourself, the Democratic Party and establishment Republicans that didn't fight back, put us in a position where our global partners were reliant on Russia, and now we're in a bad spot. It is. There isn't a good answer now because of that. If we would have been preparing for the past 10 years with the resources that we had, we wouldn't need to. Sanctions and stuff would be irrelevant. We would just say, you have no power, Russia, because we're going to provide oil to our allies. But, Trump got laughed at when he suggested this by the German chancellor and the German delegation.
Yep. And he was right. So why aren't the radical left environmental global warming wackos criticizing Biden for going and begging Saudi Arabia to just pump as much oil as they possibly can?
Because they know that their position's untenable, right? And they know that won't be a popular. They're able to browbeat you. There's a consensus. There's a consensus. There's a consensus. Well, right now, and this has always been the truth, when people suffer economically, these issues such as climate change or many other issues, gender studies and things like that, for example, those go on the back burner. When you can't feed your children, when you can't pay your bills, no one wants to hear. And so the environmentalists understand that they're in a PR battle, right? And they're not, many of them aren't in that battle because they care about the world. They are in that battle because they understand they seek to make a mint and to have government control through their green energy proposals. If it was about clean energy, they would all be pushing nuclear energy. Most of them are, right? Yep. So it's all about them controlling and being able to be at the helm of, the massive energy industry. So yeah, they know they can't speak up right now, because if they did, the American people would be like, oh, that's what you people are about. But it shows that it's a farce. If they really cared about this stuff, why wouldn't they have Greta Thunberg coming to the DNC lecturing us all about how greedy Americans should be paying $20 a gallon for gas?
So did you see Beto O'Rourke's picture that he posted on Twitter? And then did you see
with the trans kids?
Yeah. And then did you see Cernovich's response?
I didn't see Cernovich's response, but I saw the shirt. It's just like, I support trans kids or something like that.
Yeah, and then And then Cernovich responded, "Brush your teeth."
Yeah, I mean, he had some rough teeth there. He certainly did. I mean, Beto, what a joke. I mean,
he is.
Beto, now he's coming out and he's like, oh, Second Amendment. I never said I would take your guns. Yes, you did. It's just like Biden now being like, I didn't hear many people talk about this, but the State of the Union with Biden was this. It was the State of the Ukrainian Union, and then repeating Trump's talking points.
Totally.
When he started talking about the United States, it was, oh, we got to fund the police. Oh, we need to buy American. Like, this was just
totally
because they realized those positions. And I like Trump. Don't get me wrong. I would vote for Trump again. But Trump's positions were massively popular. If he wouldn't have had the apparatus against him, all the establishment against him in the way he did. And let's be honest, to many people is not the most likable guy. He's brash. Many people like that. Some people dislike that. But the policies he had were popular. And so it's funny now watching, Beto O'Rourke and Biden be like, "Oh, let's fund the police. We're not going to take your guns."
And then they'll lie and actually say, no, the Democrats have always been in favor of funding the police. It's actually the Republicans who are against funding the police because they voted against Build Back Better or whatever. It's just the gaslighting and the misinformation from the Democrats is insane. Okay, last issue here, and then we'll wrap this up. First off, did you see Sarah Palin is running for Congress, and did you see that she got the Trump endorsement?
I did, and I'm for that.
Okay, me too. Me too.
I like. Listen, it's really funny coming from the Democrat, right? The same that wanted to be like, "Oh, Trump, you can't say this about Hillary. You got to walk on the eggshells around Hillary." When you look at how the media treated Sarah Palin, now look, Sarah Palin, I don't think she's a dumb person. She talked kind of like George W. Bush. They talk sort of folksy. This is something that you could see the elitism of the Democratic Party, where they don't want people that talk like regular people. Well, I don't mind that. I don't want someone who's got a 200 IQ necessarily. I want someone who can relate to the American people and has policies that make sense to their people. And I think Sarah Palin will do a fine job. I think she did a fine job previously when she was in office. And so I support it.
I think so. I think it only helps the Republicans to have somebody like Sarah Palin, big name like that, draw a lot of excitement. She's going to draw a ton of fire. She's going to totally expose the left as being the hypocrite, anti-women, like closed-minded, intolerant left that they really are. So I think that'll be huge. Hey, we made it to the end. Any overall comments on kind of where we're at in the election here at the beginning of April?
Yeah, I think right now it looks very good with the Republicans, as we've been saying in the previous shows. One thing that I would mention that someone I interviewed talked about, there is going to be an abortion case coming to the Supreme Court, probably in June. And how that case goes, that may energize either side. So if Roe v. Wade would be struck down, which it should be, that will be the issue that the Democrats run on then. And that could flip everything on its head. The issues we're talking about now will almost seem irrelevant. So that's something to look to. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it gets overturned. So.
Yeah, no, amen. Amen to that. Well, right on. Thanks so much for doing it. And we'll plan on doing another one here at the end of the month. Thanks so much.
All right. Sounds great. Always a great time. Thanks for having me on.
You too. See ya.